Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting to order for the afternoon of August 27th. Today's invocation will be delivered by the Khmer Krom Buddhist monks of the Kamara Rangsi Temple. Councilmember Esparza will tell us more.
Thank you. Today we're honored to have the Khmer Krom Buddhist monks from the United Khmer Krom nonprofit organization, which is known as the Kamara Rangsi Temple. I'd like to welcome the Venerable Prachera Kyon Thach and the Venerable Soben Min and the Venerable Sopanarit Khan, who will be giving a traditional blessing for the success of a meeting or special event. The chant is a reminder to think right, speak right, and act right. The Kamara Rangsi Temple was founded in 2002 by volunteers with the mission of preserving and promoting Khmer identity and culture right here in San Jose. In addition to conducting the religious services at the temple, the Khmer Krom Buddhist monks teach meditation, perform community services such as blessing newlywed couples, those who are ill, and performing funeral services. The temple also holds Khmer language classes for both children and adults and hosts a wide variety of community events throughout the year, serving as a culturally rich cornerstone for our Cambodian community right here in San Jose. Thank you.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Sambuddhassa. Puttang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sanghang gacchami, tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tutiyampi saranang gacchami, tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi saranang gacchami, jayanto Bodhiya mole sakyanang nanti vantano evang tvang ya sacaya mangkale aparajita palang ke saise patavi pokale apise ke sapapodhanang tapamo tate sunagatang sumangkalang supapyatang sohatitang sukhano sumahadang Brahmacarai supatakinang kaya kamang viaca kamang patakinang mano kamang patakina nikatwa nalapantan te patakine jayanto bodhiya mole sakyanang Evang tvang vichaya ha hechaya sachaya mangkale aparajita palang ke saise patavi pokale sapapodhyanang akapatong sunakhatang sumangkalang supapyatang sohatitang sukhano sumahadang Brahmacarai supatakinang kaya kamang viaca kamang patakinang panitite patakina nikatwa nalapantan te patakine pavatu sappamangkalang rakhantu sappa devata นุเพียเวนัสตยาโสไทยภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพธรรมยานุเพียเวนัสตยาโสไทยภวตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพสังฆีนุเวนัสตยาโสไทยภวันตุเต
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Please rise now as we pledge the allegiance. Thank you. We'll begin with a commendation to a living legend, retired firefighter Sam Siebert. If any of you missed it, Sam turned 100 years young quite recently, and we want to celebrate with this commendation. Councilmember Dev Davis will present.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to recognize Captain Sam Siebert for his commitment to saving and preserving the history of the San Jose Fire Department. Captain Siebert was hired in 1946 and devoted 30 years of his life as a San Jose firefighter. Yes, you heard me right, 1946. As our mayor mentioned, Sam just celebrated his 100th birthday yesterday. Yeah. And believe it or not, he is still volunteering. He volunteers his time with the San Jose Fire Museum, and I know he puts in a lot of hours, where he has donated and restored pieces of the museum's collection. Captain Siebert is the heart and soul of the museum and is an emeritus founder. He has received the Lifetime Volunteer Award for his dedication to our city's fire department. I invite Captain Siebert to the microphone now to accept a commendation and say a few words.
I'm flattered with all this going on here. I just happen to be one of the lucky ones that live longer, and my health is still good. The city was excellent to me. They still pay my pension. And so, you know, life to me has been exceptionally good from the time I was wee till the time of today. The friendship and the relationship with the people that I associate with, and I even get along with the council. So, anyway, my life has been a bowl of cherries. I wish that part of my family, my wife and daughter was with me, but I thank you all for allowing me to come here today and be in this.
Thank you, Sam, for continuing to serve our community, both as a firefighter and now as a volunteer. Okay, we have, I believe, Councilmember Magdalena Carrasco, and she's going to present with us commendation to makers of Tomorrow, which is a wonderful nonprofit that helps students learn engineering. Come on down. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor. How do I? I don't have my high heels on. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I understand that you brought some faculty from Notre Dame. Do you want to come up? We're so proud to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. Well, I'm so proud, I have to tell you, to be able to introduce and to be here with such a bright young lady, Shruti. I met her about a year ago when they came into my office to talk about her nonprofit. First of all, let me just tell you about her impressive resume. Shruti is a student at Notre Dame High School who's already changing the world. I have to tell you, some of us work all our lives to do this, but she as a senior has already done this by starting the Makers of Tomorrow, which inspire young minds all over San Jose in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. She's also is a research intern at Stanford. She's interested in biomedical engineering, bioinformatics, you'll have to tell me what that is, machine learning, and psychology. She's been a summer research intern at the University of Iowa for the Roy and Lucille Carver College of Medicine, and she is just a nonstop dynamo. As we know, the world is shrinking, the economy is getting more competitive, and if we don't expose our young children to STEM, the odds are stacked against them. On the east side of San Jose and in other areas of San Jose where we have children who are really struggling, we know that exposing our kiddos especially makes all the difference in the world. And that's why today is especially significant, because this young woman is making all the difference in the world. I'm not sure if she truly understands the impact of her very young life on those lives around her and on the lives that she's already touching. You're changing quite possibly the trajectory of so many others who otherwise would not have been exposed to what you are doing for them. So for that, I want to commend you, and I'm going to ask our mayor of the 10th largest city in the country, in case you didn't know that, to present you with our commendation. Would you like to say a few words? Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much to Councilmember Carrasco for those kind words. And thank you also to Mayor Sam Liccardo and the entire City Council for their support of my organization. Especially Councilmember Perales' office has supported me throughout my time in running this organization. I was really inspired to start Makers of Tomorrow upon witnessing the digital divide in my own community, as Councilmember Carrasco touched upon. And it's really been a privilege of mine and a pleasure of mine to work in my community and see how these kids in places like Sunrise Middle School and Clyde Fisher Middle School, which are some of the schools that I work in, how their outlook on engineering is really changed just by doing a couple of hands-on projects and really having fun with engineering instead of thinking that it's some field that they have to be scared of or intimidated by. And that's really such a joy to see how engineering is actually making them more creative and making them more confident in their own skills. So I'm very excited to keep expanding Makers of Tomorrow, and thank you also to my school for instilling in me a very service-minded and service-oriented passion. And thank you for this commendation.
Well done. Well done. Tell you what, we're going to stand over here a little more so that way the paparazzi can come over here. All right. Here we go. Come on in. Yeah. finally, Councilmember Jimenez will join me here. We're going to present a proclamation during the month of August as American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month in the city of San Jose.
Thank you. As the mayor said, we're recognizing August as American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month, and we have Samina Usman from the Government Relations Coordinator with the Council on his American Islamic Relations San Francisco Bay Area office. So what we know here in this, please come up. Please. Anyone else that wants to join us, certainly any council members that want to come up. We have Councilmember Camus that's up here joining us as well. So the freedom of religion is a distinct, cherished right and a fundamental value upon which the law and ethics of the United States is based. Freedom in the Bay Area, we have a thriving community of, which I didn't know, 250,000 Muslims and over 100 mosques and religious centers. In Santa Clara County, there are over 67,000 Muslims who make innumerable contributions to the cultural, political, and economic fabric and well-being of California and the United States. Some of the Muslim organizations in San Jose and the Greater Bay Area are the South Bay Islamic Association, which is one of the oldest mosques in the Bay Area and is a multicultural community service and religious organization that aims to provide Islamic services to the community. We have the Shia Association of the Bay Area. Sabah is the first established and largest Shia mosque in Northern California and provides religious and community services. The Evergreen Islamic Center, Blossom Valley Muslim Community Center, Islamic Community of Bay Area Bosniaks, Masjid al-Rasul, and the South Bay Afghan Islamic Community Center all offer a place to worship, participate in community activities, and engage with larger community for the common good. The Hidayah Foundation has been serving the poor and needy in economically depressed areas of Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, West Africa, USA, and Canada by providing food, clean drinking water, clothing, supplies, educational support, and medical assistance. Lastly, the Islamic Network Group pursues peace and counters all forms of bigotry through educational and interfaith engagements and has reached millions of individuals since its founding. I believe it's appropriate to acknowledge and promote awareness of the myriad of invaluable contributions of American Muslims in California and across the country and extend to them the respect and camaraderie every American deserves. American Muslims are teachers, lawyers, doctors, social workers, tech workers, nurses, business owners, among numerous other valued professions, as well as peace builders, activists, entrepreneurs, and of course, politicians. Today, in recognizing August as Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month, we seek to afford all residents the opportunity to better understand, better recognize, and appreciate the rich history and shared principles of Muslim Americans. So thank you so much for being here. Our mayor has a commendation and proclamation to provide to Samina. Please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sam Liccardo and Councilmember Jimenez and the full San Jose Council. We truly appreciate that the City of San Jose is recognizing that August is Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month. This is after the state designation of this month. It truly means a lot to the Muslim community, especially given the rhetoric that we're seeing from the top down. And to have our city council and to have other jurisdictions also recognize this month, it truly means a lot. As the councilman said, we, are part of the community. We're part of the fabric that makes it beautiful, that makes, it special, and we add flavor and culture. And so, so we truly appreciate it. And if you want to say a couple words.
I'd like to thank the City Council in recognizing the Muslim Awareness Month. It started with the state and then the county and all the cities. So we all really appreciate that as a recognition that they recognize the Muslim community as part of this community. And we are all involved with that. And we look forward to working with all of you, which we always do. And it's a real appreciation that they recognize that every month. Last year they did that, and so they did this year. So we really appreciate the gestures that they have done. And also, I'm also on the Santa Clara County Human Rights Commission as a commissioner. So on their behalf, also, I'd like to thank the City Council in recognizing Muslim Awareness Month. Thank you.
ask the community members in the back to come. We want to fill up this picture. I know a lot of people, that's Nabil and Irfan, I'm asking you too. Yeah, we had actually had a lot of people who had shown interest in coming. I think about 60 people had responded to our Facebook page, but then at the time it got changed to midday, so I apologize about that.
I'm so sorry.
It is what it is. These things happen.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to come in the middle? Why don't you come in the middle with us?
Okay, we're on orders of the day. Dave?
Yeah, it sounds like we need to drop item 3.5. This is the ordinance excluding certain Office of Retirement Services staff from Tier 3 membership. It looks like we still have some work to do with CalPERS to get this ready. So we'll drop it and re-agendize that if that's acceptable to the council.
Okay. Are there any other changes to the printed agenda?
Motion to approve the remaining agenda.
I will note that we'll re-adjourn in closed session after this open session, so we can finish up on the remaining matter on closed session. I just want to make sure all my colleagues are aware of that in case you were not in the room when we announced it previously. Okay, let's vote on orders of the day. On to the closed session report, Danielle.
Yes, Mayor, the council met in closed session and there is no report.
Thank you. On the consent calendar, are there any items that council would like to pull?
Motion to approve.
All right, motion and second. Let's vote. I don't have any cards, do I? Nope. Not in consent, okay. All right, there's a consent calendar on land use as well. That was the evening session that we moved to the afternoon.
Motion to approve.
Under the Vice Mayor Jones doctrine, is that what it's called? All right.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is. Let's vote. All right, item 3.1 is a report of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report today.
Wow, this is not a verbose council. Okay, here we go. Item 3.3. Actually, I shouldn't say it's not a verbose council. We've only heard so far from the city attorney and city manager. On 3.3 is the employee reimbursements audit report. Welcome, Joe.
Joe Royce, City Auditor. I'm in the box with Brittany Harvey from my office, as well as Julie Cooper from the Department of Finance. Here to present our audit of employee reimbursements, strengthening and streamlining the reimbursement process. So like other organizations, the city reimburses employees for expenses they incur while conducting city business. Common expenses include training, food and beverage, mileage, parking, professional memberships, licenses, uniforms, and supplies. In 2018, reimbursements to employees totaled $717,000 for over 7,000 individual transactions. Total reimbursements have remained fairly stable over the last 5 years, with a large proportion of expenditures for training and professional development. The objective of this audit was to assess employee reimbursements for appropriateness and compliance with city policies. We audited employee reimbursements in response to a request from the city administration. We had two findings. The first finding was that expense reimbursements were generally appropriate, but some processes can be strengthened. So while reimbursements were generally appropriate and in compliance with city policies, we noted some areas where we can make some improvements. For example, in 2018, some employees received mileage reimbursements even though they may not have had a city driving permit, which is a requirement under city policy for such reimbursements. In some cases, employees had not completed a required defensive driving training to receive the permit. In other cases, the city's tracking of employees who had completed the training was not accurate. Also, department timekeepers did not always appropriately review mileage reimbursement requests prior to approval. So we have a recommendation that the city reconcile and better track city driving permit holders in the city's human resources management system, ensure all relevant employees obtain a city driving permit, and notify timekeepers and time-improving supervisors of their approval responsibilities. Also, we found that the Finance Department's roster of designated approving officials was outdated. It included individuals who were no longer employed by the city, and ensuring this roster is current is important because the city, or the Finance Department, for the most part, relies on these individuals to review and approve expenditures for appropriateness. Our second finding was that the city can streamline the reimbursement process. The authorization process for reimbursements differs across similar types of expenses and is heavily paper-based. In many instances, we found that the time to approve and reimburse employees for small expenses far exceeded the process for larger expenses. We also found that the reimbursement requests were not always submitted in a timely manner as required under IRS guidelines. So we had a recommendation that Finance and Office of Employee Relations review and streamline the authorization process for small dollar reimbursements. And also, to simplify the process, Finance should include commonly requested expense reimbursements as well as timeliness requirements either in the upcoming electronic travel reimbursement system or some other electronic solution. So the report contains 4 recommendations, and we'd like to thank the Finance Department, Human Resources Department, the Office of Employee Relations, and the City Attorney's Office for their time and insight during the audit. And with that, I'll turn it over to Julia for the administration's response.
Thank you, Joe. Julia Cooper, Director of Finance. We agreed with all of the recommendations from the city auditor and thank him for looking at the employee expense reimbursement process. As he mentioned, we're in the process of selecting a vendor for the travel reimbursement process, moving to an electronic system, and we think that that will help implement many of the recommendations here. And also the HR is moving to an online driver training course, which we also think will expedite the process for people to get that driver training and comply with the mileage reimbursement. So with that, available to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Joe, and Brittany and Gitanjali. Thank you for all the work. I really appreciate the fact that you said that we're moving forward in the RFP because it seems like this is a process that's screaming out for digitalization, and it sounds like we're going that way.
Yeah, we're in the evaluation stage right now of the RFP responses, so we hope to be rolling that out within the organization after the first of the year.
Great. And then the other question I have is just about, I know this was just an anecdote, but anecdotes can be powerful sometimes. The $7 parking reimbursement, is that process being changed so it will resemble the 2-step rather than the 5-step?
Yeah, we're hoping that whatever electronic travel system we implement, that it can have an employee expense component to it as well. So then it'll just move through electronically in the same process and not require as many signatures and paper-based.
Okay, so you just need one supervisor, and that's great.
So it will require us to do an update of a fair number of policies as we implement the electronic system as well, but we're open for the change.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Appreciate it. All right, questions? Councilmember Kamish.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the report. If we're doing streamlining, in a supervisorial role, is there any way to streamline employee onboarding too? Like, hey, this person is authorized to do, so that they can get authorization, pre-authorized authorization as soon as they're, onboarded or something like that? Is there
I think that's something we'd have to talk to the HR director about, with respect to that onboarding process. I know different departments have different processes with respect to, who gets what type of approvals. So.
Yeah, no, yeah. Okay, well, thank you. A motion to approve the report.
Okay, any questions, comments? All right, let's vote. Thank you. All right, now we have some interviews for the public member appointment to the Board of Administration for Federated City Employees Retirement System.
Yes, there are 3 applications listed in the packet. Only Spencer Horowitz and John Kloby will be here today.
Okay.
Spencer will be your first interview. You will interview these 2 and appoint 1. Then Lionel Allen, who couldn't make it today, and whomever you don't select will go to the retirement board for them to interview and for them to nominate.
Okay.
So there are 2 vacancies. I was not clear in the memo. There's 2 vacancies, but you're appointing 1.
Got it. Thanks, Tony. Welcome, Spencer. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to serve again on a commission.
That's right. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you like to serve and why you believe you could add something to the board, and then we'll just jump into questions and conversation. Thank you.
Sure, fair enough. I have a great passion for the city. I've lived here for the majority of my life. I feel the effects directly of our lack of resources that we suffer from on occasion. And as a lifelong student of the financial markets and as someone who is trained at the graduate level with a finance and economics degree, I believe I have some insight and expertise to share with the pension boards. We are in a situation, apparently, where we are paying a very high fees for very subpar performance, and that's not a very good place to be. I don't think any of us would accept that in our personal lives or with our personal financial situation, and it's certainly not something that I'm happy to see the city suffering from. So I would very much like to add my insight, my experience, my passion for seeing the city move towards probably investing and asset allocation with index funds with much lower fees to achieve a better return with lower liabilities for the city.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the council? Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi.
Hello.
If you could you talk a little bit about, I know you said you have a degree in finance. Can you talk a little bit about your relevant work experience and how you would bring that to the board?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've worked for the last 30 years in Silicon Valley as a marketing and business development executive for technology companies. I've not been directly involved in the financial industry, and I believe that's actually a strength. I believe the mayor in his city message has observed that perhaps there's a cozy relationship between those who are managing the city pension funds and investment advisors and investment firms who seem to be extracting excess fees. So I have the knowledge and insight, the math and statistical background to understand the basis on which investments are made, and yet I have a personal distance from the industry that will allow me to have an independent and, let's say, a healthy skepticism when investment advisors are trying to sell us on overpriced investment services, which would be acceptable if they were achieving extraordinary results, but when they're actually costing us money, then that is completely unacceptable.
Thank you. I'd appreciate hearing your views on risk versus return and those trade-offs and how you would go about evaluating what would make sense for the federated pension system in particular.
Certainly. Obviously, we need to look at the actuarial liabilities of the system. It's a mature system, so there is a fair amount of money that needs to be maintained on hand just to pay ongoing expenses from the pension fund. However, in the long term, the only way to earn significant returns is to take risk, and most of those risks are involved in the equity markets, stock markets. However, the one area where we do have control, we have no control over what the markets present us. Every day the market tells us what the market is doing. We cannot wish ourselves a better return. But we can definitely insist on paying very low fees to get the return that the market is giving us. I understand, according to the recent civil grand jury report, that we're paying 129 basis points in our investment funds. That's the average, I believe, between the fire, police, and the federated. That is an unconscionable amount. I pay less than 10 basis points, and you all can too, with a Vanguard S&P 500 index fund. There's simply no justification for paying these extraordinary fees. We can control what we can control, and what we cannot control is what the markets present us. But it's clear that we need to have significant allocation to equities in order to earn a reasonable rate of return for the city and for the pension funds.
Thank you. What's your view on the current discount rate that the Federated Board has?
It is probably set too high. It is the opinion of many investment professionals that the expected returns over the next 10 and 20 years are unlikely to match the returns that the market has generated over the past 20 years. We are finishing up an extraordinary period in the history of the financial markets. The interest rate for long-term bonds has collapsed over the last 30 years, and declining interest rates are the wind underneath the wings of all asset classes. So as interest rates fall, bonds go up, stocks go up, real estate goes up, every asset class is advanced by falling interest rates. Interest rates are currently at the lowest level they have been, and many people believe that in the next recession they will fall to negative interest rates, which is what we've seen in Europe and Japan. So it is important to recalibrate our expectations. We are unlikely to earn 7.5% per annum in the coming years because the valuations in the stock market and the bond market are already so high. There's just only so much headroom to achieve when you're already at a very high place.
Can you talk about the discount rate versus the unfunded liability, the actuarial liability, and the relationship between the two?
Well, the discount rate is the measure by which we determine what the future liabilities are. And if we fail to achieve, in reality, if we fail to achieve the discount rate that's planned, then the city must pony up the excess money. So if we have an unrealistically high discount rate, we will simply be on the hook for, that is, we, the city, and the taxpayers thereof, will be on the hook to pay that much more money in the future. With a realistic discount rate, based on more realistic expectations for future returns, we will align ourselves more closely with reality.
That's true, and we also pay more now with a lower discount.
Exactly. We have to fund now for the unfunded portion of future liabilities. That's clear.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Jones?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Spencer. It's good to see a small business development.
Right. I believe we served on the commission together briefly.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
In your application, you spoke about a passive strategy versus the current strategy that we use in terms of active management. Can you kind of delve a little deeper in terms of why you staked out that position?
Certainly. This is an area of great academic study. There have been hundreds, perhaps thousands, of financial professors, PhDs, who have studied the performance of active versus passive investment strategies. Active investment strategies are the idea of finding geniuses, paying them lots of money so they can provide whatever insights they have. Unfortunately, these geniuses have failed to match the simple market average. Usually, for the US stock market, that's the S&P 500. A passive approach simply says, we're not going to hire geniuses, we're not going to waste our money, we're simply going to buy the market as a whole. We're going to buy all stocks in the S&P 500, and that has continuously proved itself as a successful strategy over the years. Now, any individual manager, any individual genius can have a good year, maybe 2 or 3 good years, but to consistently beat the average has proved impossible, and we should not be chasing those pipe dreams. It almost seems like a statistical anomaly. You'd think, on average, half the active managers would beat the average and half would fall below the average. But the reality is it's much worse than that. Perhaps 80% of active managers, it's inconceivable, 80% fail to beat the average year after year. Even Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investment strategists of our lifetimes, and many lifetimes, today cannot beat the S&P 500 and said if he was advising anyone to invest in the market, he would simply put as much money into the S&P 500 as he or she felt they could afford, so long as you maintain adequate liquid assets to pay current expenses.
No, I definitely appreciate that viewpoint. In fact, when we've had study sessions and presentations from staff, they've already stated that over the past 100 years, if you just invested in the market, a passive investment, that your rate of return would be about 7%. And I noticed in your application, utilizing ETFs, which is what my investment strategy, it's about 7.5%. And my investments are around 7 to 7.5%.
Right. I have, for my own personal portfolio and for my family, achieved a greater than 7.5% return over 10 years. I believe that handily beats what the pension fund has produced. And this is not by hiring very elaborate schemes or pursuing anything other than using passive investments in stocks and bonds and very, very low cost, low basis point ETFs and mutual funds.
So we have very similar investment strategies and philosophies. Knowing the makeup of the current board, how would you advocate for your passive investment strategy, knowing the makeup of the board and the mentality of how they pursue investment strategies?
Well, I'm an engineer at heart, and data tells the story. So it's hopefully a case of presenting the facts, presenting all of this massive library of academic research that shows the superior performance. I believe many, many other municipal and state pension funds are increasingly turning to a passive investment strategy. And I believe over time it will become increasingly difficult to defend active investment strategies, particularly if they incur significant costs greater than a passive investment strategy. At some point, a position becomes untenable and arguable, and hopefully we will approach that point soon.
Great. Thank you, Spencer.
Councilmember Camus.
Thank you. I guess I must have missed you on the Small Business Development Commission because I came in 2010, I think. And
I think that may have been my last year, so our ships may have crossed in the night.
Yeah.
Hopefully I kept the chair warm for you.
Well, it's interesting. So I do concur with you, and I was serving on the pension board for 5 years since I've been in office. And one of the things when we left, when I left, what they were talking about potentially going into like angel capital funds and putting some money in pre-IPO investments. And what are your, you seem very confident in your research on basically the buying a basket of S&P 500 stocks. What are your thoughts on investing in pre-IPO or angel round funding to enhance performance?
Well, it's, I would say I have an open mind. I'd be happy to hear and understand the presentation from any venture capital firms, hear their track record, and hear about their investment strategy and philosophy. However, the bottom line is it's a numbers game. You wouldn't allocate a huge percentage of your portfolio to venture capital unless you were completely ignoring all risks because it's an enormously risky area. So if you're only allocating a small portion to get excess returns, well, that's just not going to move the needle that much. So again, if we spend an enormous amount of time, resources, money, paying venture capital, who work on a 2 and 20 formula of carried interest, which guarantees them the return, and maybe we get some return afterward, I would be skeptical with an open mind, but I am skeptical that it will move the needle very much in terms of producing and overall effect on the return for our total pension fund.
Thank you, and thank you for your interest in serving.
Certainly.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that question a bit. Spencer, and I do appreciate your willingness to serve again. I know you've been doing this in the past for the city in different roles. And I guess I'll be arguing a little bit against myself because I know, as you cited, I've been concerned about the extent to which we've been paying high fees for active investment for some time. But if someone comes to you, or comes to the board rather, saying we've got a track record in private equity demonstrating we can get returns well beyond market or adjusted for a risk well beyond what the market is providing.
Right.
When you say your mind is open, you would still be willing to consider a private equity investment, which obviously would have to be actively managed. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, very open mind. My mind would be open particularly on two aspects. One is, do they have a demonstrated philosophy? In other words, it's not just, well, we've got smart people making smart decisions, but do they have some type of specific insight, some particular algorithm that allows them to invest in market-beating performance? And then, of course, they need to show that they actually have the performance and they can demonstrate that to us. So I'm not going to be impressed with a lot of hand-waving, a lot of guys coming in with fancy suits. Right. It's, do they actually have some factors that they have discovered, and this does happen from time to time, have they discovered some factors that allow them to produce market-beating in performance, and do they have a track record of actually delivering that for their clients? And finally, do they deliver to their clients net of fees? Because very often the fees themselves capture whatever excess performance they can produce.
And similarly, if someone came to you essentially promising there are ways for us to substantially reduce our risk at the same rates of return, and could demonstrate they had a track record of doing it with actively managed approach, you would be open to that as well?
Absolutely. Again, it's the flip side of the coin, which is, can we earn as much by taking much less risk, that is, enduring much less volatility? So anything that can enhance the performance is I'm very interested. I'm very interested in the math and statistics behind it, but it has to be data-driven. It cannot be simply on assurances or on relationships or on some other very tenuous assertions that have not produced results.
And finally, I think you know that the current discount rate, I think, is 6.875. Is that right? 675 or 6875? Okay, it's 675 now. Oh, so it's been lowered. Okay, so we're now at 675. And I think you were asked by Councilmember Davis, what do you think it should be? And I think you suggested it probably should be lower. Put you on the spot for a moment. How much lower?
I think you are putting me on the spot. I think I would want to do a little bit more research. Okay. I appreciate the fact that it has been lowered in steps from, I believe it was 8.5 at one point. So we are moving in the right direction. We are taking the appropriate steps. It may be close, 6.75, maybe getting near to where the number might be realistic over the next 5 to 10 years. It depends what the investment horizon is.
Okay.
So,
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Councilmember Foley?
Thank you. Thank you for coming and answering our questions. And most of my questions have already been asked and answered, but I had a question for you. You did apply for the Federated Retirement Board. There is an opening on the Police and Fire Board as well. I can ask the gentleman a question, can I not? Should you not be selected, would you be interested in applying to the Police and Fire Pension Board?
Well, given the interaction I just heard, I'm a
which
little
I
reluctant
serve
to
as
answer the question. But I think my sense of service and duty to the city would have me answering in the affirmative.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do appreciate your frank style.
Certainly.
And we love both of our pension boards equally. Councilmember Jeb.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. I appreciate the discussion and listening to you speak. I think you have a healthy appetite for risk, which I appreciate. One of the things that we've heard from staff and the pension boards in the past is that we have a mature fund. And because of that, because people are going to draw on it sooner rather than later, that kind of limits our ability or the leash to kind of go out and have a longer time horizon and be riskier.
Right.
So can you tell me a bit about that in comment?
Well, clearly that would limit the amount that could be allocated to equities, which are typically earn more than fixed income, because equities you really have to take a long view, a long time horizon. But again, even on the fixed income side, we need to devote some efforts to managing that part of the portfolio so that we can pay out for current retirees who are addressing the system. I'll simply say, in tooting my own horn, one of the questions on the application was asking what suggestions I might make in terms of current market conditions. And on July 31st, when I submitted an answer to that question, I advocated extending the duration of our fixed income portfolio. And since that time, a few short weeks ago, the 10-year bond has fallen from just over 2% to just under 1.5%, 55 basis points. That is a huge move in the bond market. I can't promise that kind of insight always, but it was a pretty darn good call.
All right, fair enough. All right, and I didn't hear you say inverted yield curve, so we'll leave that alone. All right.
Exactly, we got to surf that curve.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I think those are all the questions. Thank you very much, Spencer. You feel free to stay or to leave. We'll just have one more individual to talk with.
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you, sir.
They're going out to get John Clobey next.
Great. Welcome. Welcome, sir. Thanks for your willingness to serve on the board.
You are very welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time and your patience here. Just wanted to give you a couple minutes to talk about why you'd like to serve and what you might be able to bring in your talents and experience to the board. And then we'll just jump into questions and conversation.
Okay, absolutely terrific. I'm one of those individuals who worked for one organization for almost his entire working career, and that was Fidelity Investments. So I have finance kind of imbued within me. It is a kind of way of life right now. It has become kind of part of what I get excited about, if you can understand that. And I've got this vitality and zeal after I've retired to be able to do something good where I know that I have the capacity and the knowledge and the experience to contribute. I'm familiar with the situation with the Federated Fund here in San Jose, and I see some pretty quick fixes. I see some excellent people that right now are part of the organization, ORS, and also the board itself, but there really is a cry for simplicity and for creating a much more nimble infrastructure to meet the needs of the plan. So I've got the time. I don't need to build my resume. I am through with my networking years, and I've got the commitment, and that, I think, summarizes the way I feel about my contributions, what I could do for the board.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks again for bringing that experience and talent to the city. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Hi, John.
Hello, Dev.
I would like you to talk a little bit about, since you have so much experience in the industry, and especially, I kind of know a little bit about Fidelity's philosophy. Can you talk a little bit about risk versus return, and specifically as it relates to the Federated Pension Fund?
Yes, absolutely. Fidelity, obviously, my career, I was more on kind of the ground level rather than the upper echelon of the financial industry. And like most firms, there is that trade-off between risk and reward. So, I mean, it depends on your individual situation, but if you can take on risk, the chances of reward are much greater. And that's the same situation with the Federated plan. However, with the enormous responsibility of making certain there are funds for the retirees, the pensioners, you have to take a much tougher, harder look and scrutinize how your investments are allocated. At the same time, you can't be completely averse of risk. You've got to mitigate your risk, and you have to make certain that the risk that you are taking on, you completely understand it, that you dig down, and if it is, for example, private equity, you better know exactly what's in there. You can't rely strictly on an investment consultant or an investment advisor. You, as a board, as a member of ORS, you've got to dig down deep. For example, some of the Neuberger Berman limited partnerships, there are elements within those partnerships that I am not convinced that the board or the staff has complete understanding of everything that is in that particular investment. So to manage risk, you got to get down really, really deep. But you can't avoid risk. You have to get return, especially in this current environment where we're dealing with negative interest rates right now. The credit markets have taken away any kind of return. So you've got to take a broader look. You've got to take a look at the equity market in a much different perspective. However, within the equity market, you've got to focus on those opportunities that will give you the reward. And it may not be the global markets. It may be just the U.S. markets. So you have to know exactly what's going on within everything that you own. And that's a tough task. It is a very tough task, but that is the role of the fiduciary.
Thank you. I'd appreciate learning your views on investment consultant fees, and just fees in general, and when they might be justified.
Well, I think that there's a trap, and that trap is that when you get into the world of institutional investing, you always feel as though you have to get the best of best, and you need all of these different investment consultants to help you make the right decision. So you have to take a hard look and assess whether or not you are getting the value from the money that you are spending on these investment consultants. I mean, anybody can give you a list of money managers to select from. Anybody can create a deck that shows you returns, but you really have to question that relationship and find out whether or not there's value. So I think the negotiation factor up front for the fees that you pay these consultants, and looking at whether there's any duplicity. Do you need an absolute return consultant? Do you need an investment consultant? Do you need a risk consultant? You do, but maybe you could consolidate that. Maybe you don't have to reach for the Mercedes. Maybe you can find the Cadillac out there. There are plenty of good firms out there, and I think that that's an area where the board could probably lend a lot of expertise in finding the right fit for the pension fund.
Thank you. And what are your views on the discount rate that Federated has?
I love the fact that the board has been very aggressive. I know it's on the lower side, but if you ask my opinion, it's still way too high. And if I could set it and I didn't have to worry about where the money was going to come from to make the contribution, it would probably be 5.25. And that might be high. But I also understand the enormous amount of money from the general fund that's going to grab to have to make that yearly actuarial payment. However, the interest on the unfunded liability is going to go down, so, is there a bit of a trade-off? A bit, but that is a very, very tough concept to grasp. I think everybody believes that 5.25 is probably a great rate of return right now, given where we are with the market. So that's my opinion. 6%, probably much more palatable, but even an aggressive 6.75, and you have to give credit for everybody to push those assumptions and make it happen, is not realistic. But it's a question of, where's the money going to come from? I mean, how much is in the general fund? How much can you afford to pay into the retirement kitty? There's a lot of money right now at 5.25. I guess you'd have to get Chiron in to open everybody's eyes, but yeah, it would be brutal.
You are absolutely correct. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your work on the grand jury and how that would either interfere or augment your position on the federated board?
I guess that's well known. That was in the application. So I believe that what it did, at least for me, was to give me a really deep baseline understanding. So what happened, I ended up going to probably 12, 15 meetings. I went through all the material. I've got a good sense of the numbers. I've got a sense of the players. I've got a sense of the mechanics. I have a sense of possible solutions. Is it going to get in the way? Did I walk away with any biases? No. As a member of the civil grand jury, it's kind of a delicate position. You see a lot of good things, but your charge really is to come up with something that might benefit and help the institution, and in this case, the pension fund. I think it's clear that it seems to be, or my opinion, it is a very complex structure with a lot of money managers, a lot of investment consultants, and boy, could it be simplified. We have empirical evidence from other plans across the country. They do it much more simply, and they get the returns. Tampa Bay, I guess it's Tampa Bay as a football team. The city of Tampa, police and fire pension, same size as Federated, about $2.2 billion. They don't have one alternative investment, and they did 8.8% last year. And I know the stats show that if you did a 60-40 mix, really simple stuff, 60% domestic equities, 40% domestic bonds, all in the U.S., your return last year would have been 9.2%. So that's, when I talk about simplicity, I mean, those are some of the things that it would be great to get the board to think about and make them understand that, yeah, there are plenty of opportunities in venture capital and private equity, but is it really necessary from a risk standpoint, from a transparency? So you have kind of two philosophies here. You've got kind of the higher end, sophisticated, sometimes you as a pension fund may not get the best IPO, and you know that those IPO shares are going to go to the big investors, the mutual funds. So you may end up with something that may never materialize, and hence therein lies the risk. I can tell you anecdotally, by being in the business for many, many years and for being up in Palo Alto for a considerable amount of time, every time upon a liquidity event, you would have the VCs come in with their cash and put it into index funds and ETFs. Which I hope tells a story.
It does. Thank you. Those are all my questions. I'll let my colleagues ask further questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Jones?
Yes, you already touched on my question, but in your application, you were talking about greater leverage of passive strategies, which you started to speak to, but can you go into more detail in terms of what your passive strategies that you were referencing, what those passive strategies would be? I know you touched on ETFs, which I'm a big fan of, but can you go into a little bit more detail in terms of your strategy and what it would be?
What I meant was that any public market investment, there's usually a benchmark index out there that's available. And is there a hard enough look at that benchmark index versus an active manager that's picked from a long list of money managers that an investment consultant provides? I think the answer is yes, with due diligence. And you probably know the scope of the investment world. There are a myriad of index funds, so you've got to zero in and find out, why do I want to buy an index fund with 15 basis points when I can get one for 2 basis points? So that's what I'm referring to, is whenever there's an opportunity for an investment to mimic a benchmark and allow a passive choice, we need to take a really hard look at that, really hard look.
So knowing the makeup of the current board and seeing what their current strategy is in terms of active investment, if you were appointed to this board, how would you advocate for, or how would you communicate to your colleagues the benefits of a passive strategy, passive investment strategy versus the current investment strategy?
I respect the individuals on the board around, very accomplished, very well educated, and very successful in their field. And I hope they would view me as the same way, but not way up here, but more down here on the ground. And I think, with collaboration, cooperation, and having a very strong dialogue, and you've got to question each other. Not in a way that breeds contempt, but collaboration. They are your colleagues. So I think using examples from across the country are incredibly powerful. We all know the Nevada story. Pennsylvania is doing the same thing. There are numerous pension funds out there that have shifted and made their mix much more straightforward and simple, and they're getting better returns at a lot less cost. So I think reasonable minds can and will understand that.
Great. Thank you.
John, thank you. I really appreciate you bring a lot of experience in your background to this. I also appreciate you served on the grand jury and produced a report.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about the report itself. I'll just skip on to the conclusions, really, around the factors contributing to underfunding the pension plans. And one of the factors that was identified was the mandatory 3% annual COLA for Tier 1 retirees, which I'm sure no one would disagree adds a considerable amount of burden in terms of unfunded liabilities. But there seemed to be implicitly a recommendation that we reduce that COLA. Is that your understanding from the grand jury report?
We thought that would be a viable, simply accomplishable recommendation. We talked about buyouts. We talked about a number of different scenarios. We also understand that it's Tier 1, and the Tier 1 liability it will dwindle out by about, 2027, maybe 2030, right in there. So, but it is an enormous cost. There's no doubt about it. I think it adds, 30 to 40 million a year.
Yeah, I don't doubt that it's a significant burden. I guess I wasn't sure if the grand jury was aware in 2012 we went to the voters and sought to reduce that Tier 1 COLA, and a trial court told us that we could not do so legally. Were you aware of that at the time you put out the report?
I know we had some outside assistance when we looked at that particular issue.
Okay.
I know we looked at it. Obviously, that's when the retirement health plan went away. That's when that extra check, the bonus check went away, et cetera. But
Well, actually, there were two separate ones. There was a vote in 2012, Measure B, and then there was a 2016 Measure B. Both actually involved the elimination of that SRBR bonus check. But it was the first measure that would have reduced the COLA for Tier 1 crew employees.
we saw that that was a significant burden to the city. And we saw that back in 2006 when it was passed. You know, times are a little bit different. And,
Sure.
You know, and the situation was, hey, we've got to keep our people here, and we've got to attract more people.
And then with regard to the unrealistic projections, investment earnings, and insufficient contributions of the employer, another point was made, I think, a comparison to San Mateo County as being an example of supplementary contributions from the employer to reduce the unfunded liability. Was the grand jury aware that San Jose is already the most thinly staffed city hall of any big city in the country?
Well, we knew that to pay down the mortgage, to make a principal payment, is an incredible sacrifice. And where do you find the money?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a tough task. And I mean, if you ask me what my plan would be, it would be, hey, if you can come up with 15 mil a year, where, who knows, that would be great. You could just bring down that unfunded liability real quickly. So.
Right. Okay, so you acknowledge that getting anywhere near 5.25, I certainly don't disagree that the discount rate could come down, but coming anywhere near that would require us to lay off hundreds more employees at a time when we're already incredibly thinly staffed. Okay. I just want, I mean, I appreciate the work of the grand jury, but it just seemed like the recommendations that were being made that were either illegal or at least did not acknowledge the realities on the ground, which are we're badly underserving a city now, given our thin staffing, and we would have to at least acknowledge the fact that to make these commitments would require significant cuts.
Like any report, we understand that there are going to be some elements that we may not fully comprehend. And I think in this pension report, the subject matter was exceedingly complex.
Yeah,
I can tell you that we lost a number of individuals just because of the fact they couldn't comprehend. Not that they couldn't comprehend, they didn't want to take the time to comprehend. And I think for a lot of grand jury reports, it's more, let's all of the citizenry be aware of what some of these significant issues are. It's exactly what you said in your budget message in March of this year. So
I appreciate that you know, I clearly highlight the issues. I know they are pressing issues for our community, and I appreciate that it's not easy work, particularly for citizens to come together and try to get their arms around something that, frankly, lots of people have been trying to get their arms around for many years. Not easy. So thank you for your willingness to take it on. Are there other questions from the council? Okay. All right, thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Thank you, folks.
I appreciate for your willingness to serve.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so Rachel's going to pass out the ballots. Please vote for one and make sure you write your name on the bottom.
Great. I just want to say, as we're collecting the votes, I think we're really blessed to have two very highly qualified candidates for this position. The fact that people are willing to serve as volunteers, taking on such great responsibility with this kind of backgrounds of experience in education, we're very grateful.
Okay, I have 9 ballots collected, and the Spencer Horowitz received the most votes and received 9, all 9. So.
Okay.
So
All right.
John Cloby will be forwarded to the retirement board for them to interview, along with Lionel Allen.
Okay, so the board has an opportunity to select one position, and they'll select from among the candidates remaining.
Right. So the
Great.
remaining 2 candidates will go to the retirement
Wonderful.
board.
Thank you. To both gentlemen, thank you again for your willingness to serve. Very grateful for that. And we then don't need any further action on this item, I believe.
That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then we have open forum. I don't have any cards. We don't have any. Okay. We're going to retire now to closed session to resume our closed session agenda. Thank you all. This meeting is adjourned.